On July 10, a young woman named Opayemi Soyinka went to a nightclub in Lagos to have fun. While there, she encountered her ex-boyfriend, Fatai Mogaji, and somehow ended up at his place. Tragically, this was the last time she was seen alive. Opayemi, a single mother, had a child, though it's unclear whether Fatai was the father or if the child was from a different relationship. It's also unclear what either of them did for a living, but it's known that they were both young, had once dated, and lived in Ikorodu. Sources indicate that their relationship was toxic, possibly abusive, leading Opayemi to eventually break up with Fatai, though the duration of their separation is unknown. On July 10, 2024, Opayemi attended a party at the 9 o'clock club in Lagos, where she unexpectedly ran into her ex-boyfriend, Fatai Mogaji. It's unclear whether they planned to meet, but considering it's Lagos, and Ikorodu residents often attend parties where they bump into exes, friends, or acquaintances from social media, it's likely this was a chance encounter. They partied hard, and at some point during the night, witnesses reported seeing Opayemi and Fatai engaged in conversation. It's possible that Fatai persuaded her to go back to his place, though the details remain vague. Some speculate that Opayemi might have been intoxicated or even drugged, leading her to follow Fatai home without fully realizing it. Those who knew her suggested that under normal circumstances, she wouldn't have gone with him. However, it's also conceivable that, given their past relationship and the time that had passed since their breakup, she may have felt nostalgic or missed him, leading her to willingly go with him. The exact details of what transpired at the club are unclear, but what is known is that Opayemi met Fatai there and eventually ended up at his house. Around 5 a.m., neighbors reported hearing a fight between them. The argument was loud, with Opayemi's voice rising in intensity, but then, suddenly, it stopped. Concerned, the neighbors suspected that something terrible had occurred, especially when they noticed Fatai leaving the house, locking the door behind him, and exiting the compound. The landlord, having been informed about the commotion, suspected foul play and decided to involve the authorities. However, the police were only called the following morning, possibly because the events took place so early in the day, around 5 a.m., and it wasn't until later that the gravity of the situation became apparent. It seemed as though Fatai intended to return later to dispose the remains of Opayemi's body. This was the belief held by many, especially when the police began piecing together the gruesome details. Upon investigating the scene, they discovered that Opayemi had been brutally stabbed 22 times across her body. After the attack, her body was wrapped in a blanket, wrapper, or curtain and left in the kitchen, possibly awaiting disposal or something even more sinister. As news of the discovery spread, Fatai likely heard that the police were closing in on him. After a month on the run, Fatai was finally found in August when Opayemi's friends spotted him and held him down until the police arrived to arrest him. The brutal nature of Opayemi's murder, being stabbed 22 times, left many people baffled. This wasn't just a simple fight, the violence suggested something far more disturbing. Sources speculated that Fatai's rage might have been triggered by Opayemi's refusal to have sex with him that night. However, this theory seems insufficient to explain the level of violence. Stabbing someone once or twice in a fit of anger might be conceivable, but to stab her 22 times, in different parts of her body, indicates something much deeper. This act of brutality suggests intense anger, rage, and perhaps even insanity. It points to a bottled-up hatred and a desire for vengeance that had likely been festering for a long time. The extent of the violence implies that whatever drove Fatai to kill Opayemi that night wasn't a sudden impulse, but rather the result of unresolved issues and emotions that had been building up over time. It seems likely that their past relationship played a significant role in fueling the anger that led Fatai to commit such a horrific act. Stabbing someone 22 times is not just an act of violence, it's an expression of deep-seated rage and malice. This level of brutality goes beyond even what might be expected in ritualistic violence, revealing a depth of evil that's hard to comprehend. It's possible that Fatai felt wronged or used in their relationship and was deeply unsatisfied with how it ended. This unresolved resentment might have turned into an obsessive fixation, leading him to stalk or trail Opiami. The idea that he knew she would be at that party and deliberately went there with the intention of luring her back to his home seems plausible, especially given how things ultimately unfolded. The encounter at the club might not have been a coincidence at all, but rather a premeditated plan driven by a desire for revenge. If the issue were simply about sex, it doesn't add up, especially considering their history. Given that Opiami willingly went to Fatai's home, whether she was fully aware or not, it's unlikely that she would have refused sex with someone she had been intimate with in the past. The idea that she was partying, possibly high and drunk, also suggests she might not have been opposed to a one-night stand, especially with a familiar person. So the narrative that he stabbed her 22 times because she refused sex doesn't hold water. The sheer brutality of stabbing someone 22 times requires a level of rage and determination that goes far beyond a simple rejection. As you mentioned, repeatedly stabbing a person, especially with that level of force and frequency, is exhausting. It's not something done on impulse or in a fleeting moment of anger, it suggests a deep-seated fury or an unhinged state of mind. This act could point to Fatai being a serial killer, someone with severe mental health issues, or simply a person consumed by uncontrollable anger and hatred. The intensity of the attack seems to reflect much more than a disagreement or a momentary lapse. It suggests that something much darker was at play, possibly stemming from unresolved issues in their relationship, feelings of betrayal, or even a long-held desire for revenge. It's likely that this was a crime rooted in something much deeper than a mere refusal for sex. It feels more like a crime of passion, driven by unresolved emotions from their past relationship. Fatai might have harbored a belief that Opiami should never have left him, leading to the dangerous mindset of, if I can't have you, no one should. This kind of possessiveness and obsession often fuels such violent acts, where the perpetrator feels entitled to control the other person's life, or end it if they can't. Fatai's background, as you suggest, might also have played a role. If he was involved in thug life or associated with a cult, it's possible that he had a certain mentality or influence from those around him, which could have intensified his feelings of rage and ownership over Opiami. In such environments, toxic ideas about power, control, and retribution can easily take root, pushing someone to commit heinous acts when they feel slighted or rejected. Your thoughts point to a scenario where Fatai's actions were not just impulsive, but possibly premeditated or influenced by external factors. It's plausible that his rage was intensified by something more, like finding out Opiami was involved with someone from a rival gang or someone he felt threatened by. This could have pushed him over the edge, making the crime more about reclaiming his perceived lost power than about anything else. As for where he went after the murder, it's likely that he sought out people who had either encouraged him or who he felt would validate his actions. If he was involved in a gang or a similar group, he might have felt the need to report back, to show proof that he had carried out what they may have pushed him to do. The idea that he could have taken pictures before leaving is chilling but not far-fetched, especially if he felt he needed to prove himself to others. Your instincts about him possibly being in contact with others who knew or even encouraged his actions could be spot on. Crimes like these often have layers of influence and motivation beyond the immediate situation. Our reasoning suggests that there could have been a network of influence around Fatai, people who might have had a hand in pushing him toward this extreme act, and who he felt compelled to report back to after the fact. You're absolutely right about the importance of moving on from a toxic relationship. When someone has been mistreated, going back or even trying to be friends can reopen old wounds or, worse, put them in harm's way again. The risk of lingering resentment or unresolved feelings turning into something dangerous is real, especially if the ex-partner felt hurt or wronged by the breakup. In cases like Fatai and Opiami's, where the relationship was toxic, staying away is crucial. The desire to reconnect, even under the guise of friendship, can sometimes lead to tragic outcomes, as we've seen. It's not just about avoiding pain, it's about self-preservation and ensuring that the past stays in the past. Keeping those boundaries firm is essential for healing and safety. When you've had the misfortune of dating someone with a dangerous or unstable mindset, it's best to distance yourself completely after breaking up. It's crucial to put physical distance between yourself and them, move out of the neighborhood, even the city if necessary. Staying in the same area where you keep running into them only increases the risk of further conflict or unwanted encounters. Being in a situation where your ex is your neighbor or living near your family can keep the tension alive and create opportunities for things to escalate. It's essential to prioritize your safety and peace of mind by creating as much distance as possible. There are so many questions to why and how this was able to happen. Well, you guys let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you feel about the story. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe and turn on notification button so whenever there's a new video, you'll be the first to get notified. Have a wonderful day, dear friends.